So picture this. World War II is finally over. But instead of relief, there's this new kind of terrifying silence hanging over everything. This was the dawn of the nuclear age. And for Great Britain, a country that had just won the war but was completely exhausted, it raised a huge question. What now? Where do we fit in this brand new, scary world? This is really the story of how they tried to answer that. A story about survival, power, and a nation trying to figure out who it was all over again. And there you have it. With those now famous words, Winston Churchill basically drew the battle lines for a new era. The world, he was saying, had just been split right down the middle. And this wasn't just some line on a map, you know? It was a massive ideological clash, the real start of the Cold War. And for Britain, sitting right there on the edge of this newly divided Europe, well, the stakes were about as high as they could possibly get. I mean, you really can't overstate how huge this change was. Before the war, you've got the British Empire, where the sun literally never set, a true global superpower. But then, victory. And that victory came with a devastating price tag. The empire was starting to fade, and the country was, financially, well, crippled. It's this massive contrast that really sets up the whole dilemma we're going to get into. All right, so let's dig into that crisis a little more. I mean, how does a country win a world war and end up in such a shaky spot? It's a real paradox, and it's one that would shape pretty much everything Britain did for the next few decades. And the reality on the ground was just brutal. Britain was basically bankrupt. They were depending on loans from America just to keep the lights on. At the same time, its colonies, places like India and all across Africa, were pushing hard for independence. The whole imperial system was just crumbling. And then, hanging over all of this, you had two new giants stepping onto the stage, the USA and the USSR. They were starting to treat the entire world like their own personal chessboard. Okay, so facing this whole new world order, Britain had to make a big choice. It was pretty clear they couldn't go it alone anymore. So what did they do? They decided to double down on their wartime alliance with the United States, creating what we now call the special relationship. But here's the real question. Was it ever really a partnership of equals? And this timeline here, it really shows you how that relationship worked in practice. First up, 1948. The Marshall Plan. That was an absolute lifeline of American money to rebuild, no question. But then, jump forward to 1956 and the Suez Crisis. Whoa, that was a serious wake-up call. Britain tried to act on its own without America's blessing, and the U.S. basically pulled the financial plug, forcing this incredibly humiliating backdown. By the time we get to the Polaris Agreement in 1963, the picture's crystal clear. Britain's independent nuclear weapon? It now relied entirely on American missile technology to even work. So yeah, it was a special relationship, but it was one built on necessity and a whole lot of dependence. Now, as you can imagine, being this dependent didn't exactly sit well with a lot of people in London. If Britain wanted to have a real seat at the top table again, if it wanted to be taken seriously as a world power, the thinking in government was that there was really only one way to do it. Britain had to build its own atomic bomb. But getting there was going to be tough. Right after the war, America passed something called the McMahon Act, which basically slammed the door on Britain, cutting them off from all the nuclear secrets they had actually helped develop during the war. So what happened? Prime Minister Clement Attlee's cabinet made a massive decision, completely in secret. We're going to do it ourselves. We'll go it alone. And you know what? In 1952, they did it. Operation Hurricane was a success. It was an absolutely staggering achievement for their scientists and engineers. But at what cost? Let's talk about the price tag. The first estimate back in 1947 was £100 million. 100 million! Think about that. This is a country where people were still using ration books for food, where cities were still piles of rubble. That amount of money was just almost unbelievable. It really shows you just how crucial the government thought this bomb was for Britain's prestige and, of course, its security. So while all this is happening in secret, the government building the ultimate weapon, a completely different story is playing out on the streets. This new nuclear age didn't just bring a sense of security. It brought a new kind of terror, a paranoia that started to split the country right in two. So while the government is busy building all these bombs, what were the actual people doing? Well, the government's idea was that this would make everyone feel safe. But the reaction from the folks it was supposed to be protecting, it wasn't exactly thank you. For a whole lot of people, the answer was to hit the streets and protest. And this is where a group called the Campaign for Nuclear Disarmament. you've probably heard of them as the CND, really comes into the picture. We're talking about a huge grassroots movement here. Their goals were super clear. 1, they wanted Britain to get rid of its own nuclear bombs. 2, get America's nuclear weapons off of British soil. And 3, push for a worldwide ban. And this wasn't some tiny fringe group either. Their big annual protests, the Aldermaston marches, would bring out tens of thousands of people every single year. And this quote really gets to the heart of what they were feeling. For them, this wasn't just some political debate about foreign policy. It was a deeply moral thing. They looked at the bomb and saw a threat to all of humanity, and they just believed there had to be a better way to live than this idea of mutual assured destruction. In a way, it felt like a battle for the very soul of the nation. Okay, so the Cold War itself might have ended decades ago, right? But the choices that were made back in that really tense, paranoid time, well, they're still shaping Britain today in ways you can absolutely see and feel. That conflict cast a very, very long shadow. And you can see that legacy pretty clearly across the board. On the military side of things, that original bomb project eventually became what is now the Trident nuclear submarine program. That's the continuous at-sea deterrent Britain has today. Politically, that special relationship with the US that was forged back then is still a huge cornerstone of British foreign policy. And culturally, well, that powerful protest spirit of the CND is still alive and well. There's a really deep-rooted tradition of anti-war activism and, a healthy public skepticism that you can trace right back to those marches. And all of this kind of brings us to a final big question. When you look at the debates happening in Britain today about its nuclear weapons, about its role in the world, about its relationship with America, you really have to wonder, has the country ever